Welcome back to Bigfoot's Wilderness. Got a new encounter story for you today. It's called Alpha Bigfoot. So let's go ahead and get started. It could only have been a Bigfoot that night in Pocahontas County, West Virginia. People talk about fear of the unknown, or maybe better known as xenophobia. Well, this was a fear that, in my opinion, triggered the very definition. This thing is unjustifiable, and yet it's real. No one could convince me otherwise. My wife and I both saw it. There's definitely a comfort in not being the only witness. I guess it kind of keeps me sane, and as a former skeptic, I now have a newfound respect for things that wander in the woods, especially in the night. I told my wife he was the Alpha Bigfoot, due to the fact that he showed us who was the dominant being that night. But let me get to my story. As a father and husband, it wasn't until recently that I could afford to spend some time off. Work kind of does that to you. I used to never have time to even think about taking a vacation, and I got sick of it. So I put myself out there and did something about it and found a better job with more benefits. A few of the guys at the new shop were avid campers and talked about it all the time. It was something I never really thought about or did since I was a teenager. And then I thought, why don't I take my kid camping? Those were some of the best times growing up. Better yet, why not the three of us? Spring was here, and overnight temperatures were gradually getting warmer. So many things to think about, like shopping for a tent, supplies, food. My wife reminded me that Jesse would be a challenge, but as any father would probably tell you, there's a point in time where you start to lose the connection, and I was determined to get it back. I was already out of the loop on music and social media. Hopefully this would be something we'd do more than once. Well, my wife and I cleared our schedules, made plans for a trip a few hours away near the Monongahela National Forest. We were going to Camp Primitive. If push came to shove, I did have a backup plan. So as we prepared, I did my due diligence and shopped around the internet on my lunch breaks or whenever I had some spare time for things I thought we needed. Not a cheap endeavor, that's for sure. Piece by piece, we were almost ready. Soon we'd be ready for our outing. A picture-perfect day on a Thursday afternoon, we made a planned stop to visit an old college friend that lived about a county away from where we were camping. Catching up and reminiscing was great, but we had to go. As we were saying our goodbyes, my buddy pulled me aside and asked if I had considered bringing a gun. Of course. Don't leave home without it. Why do you ask? Well, just better to be safe than sorry. That's all I meant. That kind of comment stuck in my head. I would make sure it was always within reach. Upon arriving at the campground, I commented that it looked like we'd have the place to ourselves. Our friend that let us camp here also let many other campers camp there as well. It was private land, but she was generous enough to let friends of friends enjoy camping on her property. She only asked that we clean up after ourselves, which was fair. First thing we did before even setting up was to take a walk. Even though we weren't specifically there for long hikes, I wanted to know the lay of the land, and there are some pretty large areas to hike. Taking some pictures of the beautiful scenery, we decided to head back, set up camp, and have a bite to eat. We threw together a quick dinner over the campfire, and afterwards just sat around talking. My daughter complained of feeling sick and occasional lightheadedness. I thought she might be dehydrated from our long walk. My wife asked me if the first aid kit, perhaps some more water and ibuprofen would make her feel more comfortable. And then I remembered, I didn't buy a first aid kit. Rookie mistake. But I can fix that. I saw a Rite Aid not too many miles back. I dig for my keys and tell my wife I'll be back soon, and as I hurried off to the car, I quickly turned around to give my wife the one thing that would bring me comfort until I returned back. Our home protection, a Smith & Wesson 45. We both know how to use it. I entered the tent and handed her the gun. Just in case, I'll be right back. She's a good shot if need be. I head back to the car and down the road. I wasn't 10 minutes down the road, and my wife calls, saying, "Turn around. There's something or someone talking outside, and it isn't a bear." I thought I heard it walk past our tent on 2 feet. "Do you have the gun?" "Yes." "Okay, I'm turning around." I ask her to stay inside the tent, and minutes later, as I pull up into the camping area, I drive my Jeep all the way up to the tent. As I get out, I can hear brush moving. It's several yards away, but close enough that I can flick on my high beams, and now I can see more movement. I catch a glimpse of what looks like a hairy head and shoulders and arm rising up. It seems to be rotating and turning its back from my car's high beams. I'm sure that's hair or fur all over its back. Of course, at first, I thought it was a person, maybe wearing a heavy jacket, except this thing was at least twice the size of myself, and I'm no slouch when it comes to size. I'm 6'7" and about 300 pounds. I'm not sure if I should poke this bear, as some would say, but it's no bear, of that I'm sure. Not wanting to take my eyes off of whatever this might be, I call to my wife to bring the gun. As she steps out of the tent, she quietly whispers, "That's where I kept hearing the noises. It was making growls and like a garbled talking. What do you think it is?" We were scared half to death. I had the gun trained on that very spot from inside the tent until you got here. By the way, did I mention she's an excellent shot and very capable? Lucky to have her. Well, you know, West Virginia has a big black bear population. That's all it is. I tried to sell it, but I'm almost positive my comment didn't make her feel any better. I'm not Mr. Outdoorsman, but I don't recall ever hearing or reading anything about black bears growling. They are, however, mostly shy and reclusive and keep distance from us humans. Let's leave everything and just go. As my wife turned to get our daughter, this thing in the brush seemed to take interest in where my wife went. As it stepped slightly out and rose to its full height, turning slightly and then stepping in the direction of our tent and out of the headlights of the car. I scrambled to get my headlamp out of my pocket that I quickly turned on and put out in an attempt to illuminate this enormous creature. And as the next 60 seconds moved in slow motion, I made either the bravest or quite possibly the stupidest decision in all of my 40 years. With my weapon extended, I yelled at it in an attempt to keep it from advancing toward the tent. I had 7 bullets. 7. What kind of damage could I have done? It really was twice my size, which meant it was over 600 pounds, and maybe another 1.5 feet taller. My guess again? Probably not much, but I had to create enough of a diversion so that my wife and daughter could get to the car, and it worked. With everyone in, I handed my wife the pistol and made a hasty 3-point turn and got out of there. As we sped away in the darkness, we hoped it didn't give chase, and I soon got my answer when a rock bounced off the roof. All of us yelled simultaneously out of sheer fright and frayed nerves. After my hands stopped shaking and we put a few miles between us, I contacted my college buddy and we spent the night. Naturally, he asked questions out of curiosity and I did my damnedest to avoid directly answering them. Jesse got sick and we forgot to bring our first aid kit. It would have been a very difficult night without it, so we thought it best to just pick up and leave. I really appreciate you putting us up for the night. I'll swing back in the morning and clean up my mess. After a sleepless night and talking with my wife, I told her I'd head back out in the morning to recover our belongings. Amazing how some daylight can bring back your courage. I brought my gun too, just in case. As I suspected, our belongings were torn and tattered, the tent had been collapsed, our cooler was missing, clothes and utensils were spread out all over the ground. I'll admit that I was spooked, but I collected everything I could, and I tried to find everything as quickly as possible. But there was something else. I don't know why, but something caught my eye, and it was above me. Hanging over the tent was a very large tree, and in the crook of that tree, about 12 feet up, was the carcass of a white-tailed deer, a doe. Its body had been twisted and broken. It was quite gruesome and eerie, actually. But could we have been keeping it from its meal? Is that what it was? A meal? Was it trying to get to its stash of food? Or did it mean something? Was it a warning? Or was it a fresh kill just recently stashed, like this morning? With that last thought, I made haste and got out of there. On the ride back to my friends, I questioned again what I saw. Do black bears growl, walk around on 2 feet, or even have broad shoulders? Do they store food up in trees like the leopards of Africa most of us have seen on TV? This was no cat. I saw its arm, I saw its back, shoulders, and head as it tried to block out my high beams. No, it could only be one of 2 things: an extremely large and hairy human, or a Bigfoot. As the weeks went by, I did do some follow-up research and considered emailing one of the research organizations. They would probably want me to meet them at the spot, and I would have to turn them down. Bigfoot has nothing to fear from me, because I'm never going back.